How are you doing today, my lazies? I've been waiting to do this video for a while, and I'm sure many have their own opinions and theories on how to salvage the ruins of this once great juggernaut of entertainment. The fall of the MCU should be a college course at this point, because there's no way something this profitable became the laughingstock of the world so quickly after its success. Let me run down the conflicts and resolutions for you, and even promote a series I've been working on since I love to write for an MCU that would profit a lot better than the once high-paid juggernaut. And with that being said, to start with the conflicts this series created for itself, we have the Marvel shows. No, not the good ones that came out before the woke-mageddon like Daredevil, Punisher, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. No, I mean the ones that were supposed to raise excitement but failed miserably. Now, the issue with the shows isn't that they're woke necessarily. No, the real issue is that they're misplaced and actor-based rather than story-based. The company saw a specific actor gaining fans and decided to make a show or movie involving them, and came up with terrible spin-offs of already terrible properties. This series was beloved for its writing and attention to detail, not the actors you decided to hire. Another issue is the awkward comedy, tasteless wokeness, and attacking the fans. Companies try to copy what works for someone else without actually looking into why something like that works. Rick and Morty made it popular to bash fans, but that was only because it's already established as a meta show with meta commentary and comedy. When something is at its peak, that's when you can tease the fans. But when you're tanking horribly, that is not the time to bash fans that pay you through loyalty, even when they shouldn't. The fans have a point this time with the Midverse saga, as it's just an over-woke, tasteless comedy. Comedy was funny when it happened sporadically, but again, companies saw one thing that was working and overused it to the point it's goofy and unsatisfying. The messages in movies were hailed as great writing by fans, but not this insane agenda Hollywood is trying to force down people's throats with no ounce of subtlety or actual messaging. They believe they're pushing a message, but the execution comes off as a teacher in a classroom attacking you for failing instead of helping you learn from your mistakes. Another major issue is allowing actors to ruin the marketing. Now, I know the actor strikes, pay discrepancies, and shady business tactics is why they push their actors to the spotlight for promotion, but at least educate them that they are the face of a business and that good press can contribute to their increased pay. It used to be a coveted position to be an MCU actor, but now it's starting to lose its stimulus package effect. The main moment that should have sent red flags on a marketing team is when Brie Larson ruined her own reputation by trying to pander to an extremely small minority of her audience, not knowing that the people she bashed are the ones that pay her the most. Not protecting your actor's images and reputation shows the flaws in a marketing team for even allowing her to say something like she did to bash her main audience. And there are more than just her that ruined their reputation along the way, and it's mostly the fault of Disney. On to the most prominent conflict that affects everything the most. We have character portrayals that just ruin characters altogether. The Infinity Saga isn't exempt from this, and the new saga should have learned from it. But I digress. Clearly, there are less intelligent or super prideful people in the directing and management positions, so until they start realizing this isn't good marketing, they'll just keep doing it, unfortunately, until someone takes them down a peg. The most notable screw-ups are Hulk, Hawkeye, Falcon, Ultron, Mandarin, Taskmaster, Super Skrull, the Dark Elves, the Black Order, Captain Marvel, and Nick Fury in his later years. Now, Hulk is the one that hurts the most because it just seems like the studio truly doesn't know what to do with him. I know there's an issue with Universal, and why they have rights to the Hulk at all is weird, as Disney has literally used and created Hulk shows on Disney XD before. So they literally have a blueprint that they created that they can use to make a better Hulk. Hulk movie is severely overdue, and the first one was actually incredible, pun intended. See what I did there? All they had to do was build off that Hulk and choose between the Worldbreaker Hulk saga or the Maestro Hulk saga, or even combine the two. The Professor Hulk thing is trash for so many different reasons. He's not funny, he's not adding to anything, he has lazy character writing, and it happened too fast. Hulk needed redemption from the Infinity War fiasco. He's not even as smart as Tony anymore, he's weaker, and there's literally no good storyline to follow with him. She-Hulk didn't make that any better. Moving on to another one that actually hurt as a fan of the animated Avengers cartoon as a kid was Hawkeye. I was so excited to see the Hawkeye I grew up on, but then they went the CW Arrow route and made him serious. But unlike them, this more serious Hawkeye just wasn't interesting. Hawkeye is a really cool character that could have added so much depth to the weight of the situations that were occurring. They just did this man the absolute dirtiest and then tried to backtrack with his show. While I love the show and highly recommend it since it's actually solid, this is what his character should have been like in the more relevant days of the MCU. Similar to Hawkeye, we got a more serious Falcon and a complete shift in idolization. In the animated Avengers, he's more obsessed with Tony and becomes his apprentice that eventually matches and slightly surpasses him. But in this rendition, we went with the more Captain America obsessed Falcon that has great scenes when he's a side character, but then less than par feats as a main character. I'm still excited for the new movie, as the trailer made it feel like it was the same vibe as the Winter Soldier movie. I don't hate this version of Falcon, and feel this one makes more sense than the animated one, considering he does become Captain America in the comics. But I will say that the animated version was slightly better. The realism in his woke speech of people not wanting him to be Cap since he's black makes sense in context of the show, and even in the audience themselves, since people didn't know that he became Captain America and were bashing him before the show was even announced. Speaking of bashing, let me make the disclaimer that I actually do like this version of Ultron. I just think he's the least likable version of the character that I've seen. This is a threat that could have been extended to multiple movies even after his defeat, and even given Vision a reason to exist, since his contributions lasted for the end of one movie and never again was he useful. Even in WandaVision, he was still useless and used as a side character when he was touted as one of the most powerful characters in the saga. his downfall should be studied as well. The swapping of Mandarin, Taskmaster, and the Super Skrull was so beyond disingenuous, I don't even know what to call it. Super Skrull had all this hype and build-up, only for him to be trashed and weirdly created. Taskmaster suffered from that and gender swapping, like Ghost in Ant-Man was gender swapped for no reason. Mandarin was a clown actor, then finally given a decent portrayal in Shang-Chi, only for him to be beaten when he could have expanded the Iron Man and Iron Fist stories along with their apprentices. But I digress. The Infinity Stone adventure was already cool, so a race to find the rings would have been the next best thing and set up for Doom in the end of the saga. But again, what do I know? Not like they literally did this for 2 seasons of Iron Man Armored Adventures on Disney XD yet again. On to portrayals that started good and just ended trash. We have the Dark Elves, Black Order, Captain Marvel, and Nick Fury. Now, Nick Fury was the black guy everyone wanted to be. His little screen time was used in such creative ways that people still respected him without him being a prominent character in anything. Finally, getting a show about him was hype for everyone, even though Marvel was failing because there's no way you can ruin Nick Fury. Right? Guys? Yeah, they took that as a challenge, and instead of creating the actual Secret Invasion story and using that show to introduce the multiverse by adding in some of the previous show heroes that actually worked from Netflix and ABC, or something cool showcasing how skilled Nick Fury actually is, but instead, let's demolish his legacy to high hell and discredit everything he did in the MCU by saying he was actually an alien hired by Fury to do all the cool stunts and skills. I don't know who told them that would be a good idea, but it was terribly executed and highly unnecessary. Captain Marvel should have been built up as the next Iron Man, along with Black Panther being the next Captain America, as they're the sides of the second Civil War. Rest in peace, Chadwick. But Black Panther could have been recast with the whole multiverse saga thing and still been a prominent role. Her portrayal was just, I'm OP with no struggles, so love me. And then Brie Larson decides to offend her core audience, making it so much worse for her than it already was. The movie was already misplaced in the saga and people didn't really like her portrayal, but were still in limbo depending on her next movie role and appearance. Yet she just yanked that limbo out of existence. Watch what you say in public, people. Now, the Black Order and Dark Elves were just heavily underskilled, and they blame budget, and you can't really make the powers realistic, yet the powers are really something that netted heavy CGI. They did Hulk and Thor well without adding too much, so making the Black Order better and more menacing could have actually been done. Honestly, the Infinity Saga should have been split into 3 to give them more shine and build the hype for Thanos, while building more wealth for the finale. The Dark Elves had a great story, but they were more Lord of the Rings with them instead of making them MCU likable like they did with Loki. The fact Loki was still the best part of the movie and overshadowed the new villains was sad. They weren't bad, the execution was just too boring for them to shine. On to a subtle yet highly important conflict. We go to storylines. Now, for the most part, the MCU is great at storytelling, but even with their most trash properties, look objectively, and you'll see it at least has a story. With that being said, the weakest stories that are affecting the MCU right now because of the absence of Steve and Tony are the Eternals, She-Hulk, Spider-Man, Thor, Hawkeye, Black Widow, Secret Invasion, Echo, Kang himself, and the multiverse saga itself. Probably wondering why I didn't add Captain Marvel, even though I said she should be more pivotal, right? Well, her story isn't even important to the MCU at all, as she literally holds no purpose, even though she should. Now, me, like most Marvel fans, not the casual MCU lovers, can agree that the X-Men should have been the next focus after the Infinity Saga. We could have ended it with an Avengers vs. X-Men story, and that would have exploded the internet. All they had to do was subtly introduce mutants into the ending trilogies for the lingering movies that didn't get to complete, and then dive into an Avengers movie that introduced the X-Men and then focus on the X-Men until the end, where you do the team versus team thing. Fantastic Four could have been introduced in this time. Making movies for the previous show characters could have been done at this time. Shows involving the individual X-Men characters could have been done in this time to build anticipation with X-Men shows while the Avengers movies were playing, and then do one high budget event of the crossover to cement the X-Men saga or anything similar. This multiverse saga was poorly planned and centered around the wrong villain, even though, say what you want about his controversy aside, Jonathan Majors did do his thing. Now, for Kang, I don't mind him being the big bad, but he should only be a one-movie villain like they did with Ultron, Loki, the Black Order, because even though you can make a grand story around him, trying to top Infinity War with him as the Thanos replacement wasn't a great idea at all. Galactus should have been the follow-up big bad, while Kang just raises the stakes of the one-off event villains. We go from ground level to Thanos for Saga 1. Then we go from Thanos level to Galactus level for the next saga. Would have been the perfect transition and given them time to flush out the X-Men now, since they have Thanos level or Kang level villains as far as excitement. Apocalypse done right, Mr. Sinister, the juxtaposition of Magneto, the Sentinels, all would have been grand enough to build anticipation for the threat of Galactus. And then end off the entire MCU with Doom as the final big bad. That should have been a marketing strategy, as the shows would have raked in more, since it's about characters people actually care about and stories that will get people much more excited. The events that could be set up would be much more grand than Infinity War ever was. And the profit margin, even during the pandemic, would have skyrocketed. On to something that could have been avoided altogether or executed better. Black Widow and Eternals were terribly placed. Black Widow should have been built up after the Civil War fiasco and would have been better than a Captain Marvel movie, especially since we wouldn't know that she already died and it was building for the Dark Avengers saga. And that was at the height of the MCU, where Scarlet was the most lusted after actress. That could have skyrocketed her career and added better anticipation for what's to come. On a different note, Eternals should have been a show, because unlike Guardians, the scale of power and importance for these characters is something that needs to be explained and fleshed out, so it makes sense as to why they were never involved in Avenger threats, while also connecting them to Thanos to explain how he's a mutant and tie everything into Galactus later with the Celestials. This one was just poorly placed and a cash grab that didn't even work out well. The non-focus on Hawkeye to ground the Avengers story was criminal. He's actually a very nuanced character that could have increased the stakes of the Infinity War with his grounded perspective and creative banter if executed correctly. That also goes for the unnecessary cash grab that is Echo, the spin-off of the Hawkeye show to bring representation to Native Americans and deaf disabled people. It started off great and just fell flat with the whole powers thing and making Kingpin the joke of the series and all the unnecessary drama. This didn't need to be created, and no one was even looking forward to watching this, especially after it flopped like people predicted. She-Hulk was a woke mess of feminist propaganda that was disingenuous to the actual struggles of women. The popularization of degeneracy needs to be studied and destroyed because this whole show started funny and just gradually got so much worse than it needed to be. Even the meta commentary was awful, and the fourth wall breaking wasn't even done cleverly, as she ruined the Hulk storyline as well. Secret Invasion was just trash. It started with so much hype and anticipation and flopped at the end. If they had actually shown the Skrull and Kree War, this might have been better received. But this show and subsequent The Marvels movie just ruined the entire build-up for the war itself. They built something and just didn't know how to finish it for some reason. On to the final two that just ruined the MCU for non-awful reasons. We have Thor and Spider-Man. Now, full disclaimer, I actually have a new respect for Thor after finally getting to read the Rune King Thor saga a bit. And Spider-Man is my all-time favorite, with Batman being the only one equal to him. With that being said, the MCU butchered Thor just to try to compete with Lord of the Rings and bring in women with eye candy. Spider-Man suffers from something a bit different though, as he's not even Spider-Man, but Iron Boy Jr. Thor did well for the third movie, and that's how his other movies should have been formatted. But for the first two, they were boring, and the last one was just awful. The cheesy comedy unseriousness of the situation and then the mishandling of the gods was just tragic. The second movie was just god-awful boring, even though it had the best storyline, and the first was mid. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't entertaining enough to be good. It was right in the middle. Ragnarok just can't be matched with how epic that movie was, balancing actual comedy with actual action in a way that neither overshadowed the other. On to Iron Boy Jr. We have the worst Spider-Man. Now, I'm not saying that Tom Holland is a bad actor or that the movies were bad. They were just mid, and this Spider story it just wasn't hitting. The original two versions were exciting, dramatic, action-packed bangers, even with the trash at the end of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 with the AIDS goblin or whatever terminal disease he had that wasn't explained. Bully Maguire in the third Spider-Man was more entertaining than the first two MCU movies. While I liked the attention to detail and how the villains were created, the Iron Boy Stanfest just ruined my enjoyment, and I was actually excited for the Iron and Spider-Man collab. Showing Spider-Man getting carried by Iron Man the entire movie and even having Tony as the focus of the second really just took away what makes Spider-Man exciting. The struggle he goes through is what inspires people, and his intellect is what motivates people to want to be just like him. This Spider-Man had no tragedy, no interesting villains, no interesting plot and story, and even an interesting new love interest. Choosing Liz was okay, but not adding Black Cat is just criminal. Or even establishing Silver Sable, Yuri, Silk, or any of the other Spider-Verse characters like Miles just makes the screen time feel wasted. I can go on and on because my passion for Spider-Man is near stand level, but I digress for now. It just wasn't interesting enough to be called a Spider-Man trilogy, even with the banger at the end. Now, I was originally going to do everything in one video, but editing that is a hassle and it would be too long due to my ranting. I will just break this segment into 3 parts to highlight what I want to portray better and give everyone a better understanding of what can be salvaged from the MCU and how to make a better, more marketable version of this once great movie series. Let me know your thoughts down below and what you feel the problems of the MCU are and any solutions you'd suggest. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more. And until next time, stay lazy.